Hello, I am John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that say, where is that? Well, Canada, obviously, we know, and then British Columbia on the west coast. And Prince George is in the center of British Columbia, northwest, east, south, 500 miles north of Vancouver. A beautiful, beautiful province. Today, we got a very special guest. Her name is Michele Clarizio. Michele is the author of a #1 Amazon bestseller novel and a powerful story that was born not from ease but from relentless preservation. Her journey to publicize was shaped by years of heartbreak, doubt, and unwavering belief that was a story the world needs to hear. That's why she wrote it. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So as an author and as having written the books, I'm an author as well. And writing books is not easy. And for me, I was told many times, you had such an interesting life, you should write a book about it. And for 20 years, I tried, stop, start. And then today, I'm nearly 85 years young, I call it. And then about 6 years ago, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I started writing the book against all odds. And it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2.5 years to write it. I enjoyed it and then did other things. Tell us your story about your book that has become so immensely popular as the #1 best-selling book on Amazon. And if you have a copy of the book that you can show to us maybe before we start? I love the cover, The Price of Truth, and the title very interesting because this book's corrected from my experience and others is that the cover is extremely important. The title is immensely important because what you want to see happen is that as it is in the bookstore, you want somebody to pick it up. Right. Once they have it in their hand, you're halfway there, then read the back and then start kind of going through it, and then you likely will have a buyer and potentially either in the real version or in some other format. So what made you do it? And tell us the story, how did you get there? And I know you've gone through challenges in your life from the time that you were young. Share it with us.
Yeah. So, well, it was a very long journey that actually brought to this, going through a journey to publish. The only way that I can tell you how this all came about was that it felt very divinely guided. So, I went to college and I was an international finance major. I didn't take English classes. I didn't write. It was my senior year. I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and I had one more elective that I had to take and before I graduated to fulfill the curriculum. And so I ended up taking a journalism class on advertising. And so one of our tasks for the class was to create an advertisement for Visa. And so we worked on it, for the whole semester. And I remember it was just so exhilarating to me to create something from nothing to watching it all unfold. It really gave me just fuel. And it was, and I never realized that I had that creative side of my brain that I didn't tap into. I was a numbers person. Math came easy for me. So that's naturally kind of where I went for my college, deciding on a major. I was like, oh, well, I should do finance. And so at that point, I was really done with school. So I was I knew I probably picked the wrong major, but I wasn't going to go back. I wanted to be done. So, I went on, I got a job in the real world, and then I had kids, and that was, part of my, I read a lot when my kids were younger. And every time that I would read, I found myself almost rewriting their story. I'm like, oh, I would have done it a little different. Like maybe I would have picked this, or, so, not judging
Yeah.
their creation, more of just like saying, oh, well, I might have done it this way, or whatever the case was. So it was just one Mother's Day that my kids were like, what do you want to do, Mom? And I was like, I just really want to sit and read. And they were like, what? And so I was on the deck, just reading one of the books that I was diving into, and I was like, I think I could write a book. And it literally just came to me out of nowhere. I had never been someone that was like, it's on my bucket list that I want to write a book. It never was that for me. I enjoyed reading when I could. It felt like a great escape. But then it was like, okay, well, that's a great idea, but how are you going to do it?
It
I didn't know
became
how to
more
write.
as an inspiration to you, right? That's what I
Yeah.
find if I read, and I'm not a great reader really, but it became an inspiration for me what thoughts others had, and it awakened in me that I'm a storyteller. That's who I am, more than anything.
Right, right. And so without having any formal training other than reading, I sat down and I did kind of like a free write. And that's when my protagonist was born. And I just immediately fell in love with her, and her name is Karis Russo. And I knew that like once she came to life on the pages, that I had to tell her story.
Yeah.
And so that's how it started. But it was a very long journey. It took me 12 years from the time that I first started that to actually publishing. And I remember I was so proud that I wrote 26 pages the first time. And then I went to go read it out loud. And I thought, you were very misguided, girl. This is terrible. So, I had to really teach myself how to write. And the way that I did that was I would just read and, analyze scenes and, dialogue and, how other authors explained, the surroundings and, and then of course the soul of it is creating different characters that have a different voice. When you write fiction, you don't want a male voice to sound like a female voice and
Right.
and things like that. So it's the hardest thing I've ever done, hands down.
But then, over that period, for all those number of years, you then came to the point that you are now a #1 bestseller on Amazon with your publication, The Truth, The Price of Truth. And so that was amazing. So you learned the hard way, and got obviously feedback from all the stories that you read about others and books that they published. So how do you feel about it now if you look back and as an inspiration for others? Because you and me are not unique in terms of it took me a long time. It took you time to live the life of challenges first and then become the writer to share with others the challenges that you want to, and hopefully it will be an inspiration to others as well.
Yeah, I think that For me, once it was in my heart, I wanted to let it go. I did not want to write the book because it's a hard journey, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to take a path of least resistance, right, than to do something like that. I felt like I had this constant battle going on. It's like, who do you think you are? You can't write a book. You're like, you don't know how to do this. Everyone's going to laugh at you and judge you. And, so there was all of that, that challenge. Then there was the time constraint of, I had gotten divorced after I started writing the book. And then I had my kids, on my own a lot of the time. And I had to go back to work full time. So it's like, how do you manage it? Right. It was like every time I turned around, like I felt like there was more roadblocks and how was I going to do this? But I could not let it go. Even when there was times where I put it away and had to focus on getting back into the workforce, it still just kept tapping on my shoulder always. And so for me, it was, I had to do it. I just had to. So I think if it's whatever it is in somebody's heart that they feel like they have to do, even if you want to ignore it, for me, I couldn't. So that was part of it. And then the other part was that my kids knew that I was writing this book, and I couldn't let them down. They were just like cheering me on all the time. Like, you can do it, Mom. Like, this is great. And, I'd read excerpts to them and they'd be like, the first time my son was like, wow, Mom, like when he really, grew up more and understood what I was writing, he was like, you actually are a really great writer, So it was just that part. I was like, not only can I not let myself down and God down, that I felt like he put it in my heart to do this, which was the number one, but I couldn't let my kids down, right? So I think.
So Michele,
Yeah.
the kids are such a big part of your life.
Yeah.
You mind if you share with us their names and their age, if you can,
Yeah, so I have two kids. Mackenzie is 24. And she's in med school. And my son is Matthew, and he is 22. He is a computer scientist engineer, so he just graduated, so he has a real job now. So they're off to the races now, and great, amazing young adults.
Yeah.
But we've always been extremely close, and even right before I came onto this interview with you, they were texting me and cheering me on. So it's that has been amazing. Just to, because they, I wanted always to give them that strong sense of like, you have to work hard and you have to, follow your heart and, the path that God has put you on. Sometimes you don't want to take that path, but we're all here for a reason. And I think that it took, it took me a long time to write it. So I didn't think I'd be publishing a book at my age, right? People are starting to retire that are in my age bracket now. And I'm like, I'm just getting started. What is happening? So I would say, for people that are kind of grappling with what should they do? You just have to start, right? Like, it really was, like I said before, when I started free writing and all of a sudden these characters started coming to life, it was like, I can't walk away from this. There's a story.
And then the other part about it, Michele, is that, with age, for me, when I wrote this one, I was already in my late 70s. And then since that time, I'm working on my sixth book, but the struggles that I had is, I was born in Holland, in 1940, had, quite a life before that during the Second World War. Then we were liberated by the Canadian Army. It made such an impression on me as a 5-year-old that my dream was to go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And so that's what I did when I was 24. And then academically, I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And that people said to my parents, what are you going to do with this guy? And some people said, send him to the mentally challenged school. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So I started working as in a furniture factory when I was 12. But I knew that I was just as smart as all the other people that went to college and university. But my biggest problems and challenges were along the way. Who am I? And why am I different? And then coming to Canada, I wanted to start with nothing, with a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, a dream to go to build a lumber mill, go to British Columbia, that's where all the trees are. When I came to British Columbia to Montreal, took the train across Canada, took 4 days, 5 nights. My God, that is a long way. And so then I arrived in Vancouver and then went to the immigration department, couldn't speak English. And fortunately, there was a German fellow and I could speak some German. And I told him, I want to build a lumber mill. He said, go to Prince George, that's 500 miles north. Did that with the Greyhound bus. And I'm still 6 years later in Prince George, but I travel a lot, but so I can still see where the Greyhound station was. And I came off the bus, I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. And didn't know a soul, didn't speak language, but I had the dream of building a lumber mill. And I did, along the way, but, and all the challenges in between. But the biggest challenge for me was, who am I? Why am I different? And it was not until after I was here already, I was already successful. And everybody said, oh, you're so successful. And there was something about me that didn't give me the confidence. And so until in 1997, already was here for 32 years. I walked into a bookstore and I picked up a book. And I have the actual book that I picked up right here, Driven to Distraction, by Dr. Halliwell. And I don't know why I picked it up. And I opened the book and it's about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I wrote in the book, how is it possible to find this book? And now I finally know who I am. And it was January 1997. And Dr. Halliwell, an amazing individual, wrote 18 books, 5 about distraction, has dyslexia and is ADHD. So do I. Checking on, the Google, and the more I checked on it, and then after I was at my doc and say, yeah, it's ADHD, then I found it's a superpower. And it is, in looking then back to my life as to failing grade 3 and failing grade 7 3 times, I have always had difficulty. I was very good at numbers. I was a very good writer, but not a good reader. And so hence then the ADHD and then, dyslexia, so it kind of explained a lot of things around my life. And then from there and then, it opened up a lot of other things for me. Communications to me has always been important. I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. So I'm a presenter now as well, in demand. And then obviously I'm working on my 6th book. And then at the same time, I love podcasting. And podcasting, I believe, where the media as we know, the television stations, CNN, ABCs, and all the other ones in the same in Canada, CBS, and blah, 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 are declining in viewers. And so does the media, the traditional media. But podcasting, I believe, is only on its infancy globally, and it's an amazing media and an amazing platform. I love it.
That's great. Yeah. And I think that, to kind of dovetail off of what you just said about your journey, So there, I think we all, I don't think, I know that we all have a journey. And as I look back on, what was the driver to have a story to tell, there's a thread through my book where the main character's dad was murdered. And I actually lost my dad when I was 2. So he was in a plane crash. And I was, as 2 years old, I was very nonverbal, right? I didn't speak much. I didn't know what was going on. And now that I've looked back on this, while the death of her dad plays a role in the book, it is not, it's very, very sub in the, it's not the main thread. But writing this allowed me finally to be verbal with my the challenges that I went through, that I was able to cathartically write about through her lens. So as as you go through life, you kind of discover what you just said, who I am. I didn't know. I knew that it impacted me tremendously.
Yes.
But being able to actually put words and emotions into what the character went through, and explain like loss and grief and trying to get through it, I kind of think was the reason, one of the main reasons why I wrote the book, was to finally have that expression and processing and turning all of that. It doesn't probably make sense to people, but when not having a dad equated to shame for me. And so I know it doesn't make sense, but that's what
it does, Michele, because it affected you in your life, as it does for many, many other people that have gone through trauma of some description, and
yes.
like even for myself, growing up during the war years, blah, 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 all that other kind of stuff, and not being very good academically, blah, 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 so all of that had an effect. But I kind of thought about it always as, whatever that's not of interest to anybody else, likely, and everybody else appears to be having normalized, but that's not so, because we all collectively go through challenges and ups and downs, and it's the inspiration from people like yourself and myself, having gone through life, is all the ups and downs that happen, that I became to the point that I have an obligation to speak about it, and to write about it, and to podcast about it, because so many people worldwide, globally, really are going through challenges, and that from my life, from your life, going through all the ups and downs, writing about it will become an inspiration. And I know it does, and it will. And the more we do that, and the more we recognize, like maybe ADHD, dyslexia, if you wish, of all those things, and are academically being challenged, maybe, that all of those do not necessarily mean that you cannot be successful. You can. You are special. And if I give, which I do, presentations to young people in particular, in high schools or colleges, universities, so I always, doing a presentation like that, I say, I ask that, what are you planning to do from here on? And a lot of them say, I don't know, so it's very important to start kind of looking at what direction have you got an interest in, where should you go from here? And then the other part is that I always feel, in particular with younger people, also middle-aged and some older elders as well, they feel that they are just not good enough. This is not right about them, that's not right about them, or they're so overly challenged about what other people think about them, how they look, how they do this, that, and the other. I always say it took me a long time to learn that there's only one of you on this earth, and you are special. And With all the things that you have, that you're wearing, that you look like, you are special. And that doesn't mean that you are special, meaning better than, but you are special and unique. And so, and to find that confidence that, like in my case, your case, to who am I is important, because it will have an effect. All the things that happened, the loss of your dad, although you were only 2, immensely affected your life from there on in. As a part of it, and the same issues like that or other trauma affects a lot of other people, and it's very, very important for you and me to have this discussion about that as to what happened to us and how did it affect us, and let it be an inspiration to other people around the world. And that's the objective that I have. That's why I believe in podcasting and so much, and that's why I do it a lot.
Yeah, and I think that one of the another issue that I tackled with the book was anxiety. So my character is 17 years old, the Karis Russo protagonist, and I think that one of the things that I wanted to bring into the book was that, you feel like everybody else is doing fine. You feel like everyone else is running around and you're the one that's struggling, when, you might see that on social media, right? But that's just not the case. Everyone's struggling. If you're here, you're struggling. And, when I grew up, we didn't have social media. I don't even think I ever used the words "I'm anxious" to my friends, or I have a lot of anxiety. It was just a different time. And so dealing with, her being very true about her anxiety and what she was feeling, and, openness with her friend group, and they had a safe zone. And I really wanted to create that so that maybe it would open dialogue for, young kids to talk to their friends about, and their parents. The other thing that I focused on as the book was that the relationship between the mom and the daughter was very, very strong. And just being able to have your parent to go to talk about struggles, because it's not unique just to you, right? And you might have a different challenge, but we're all in the depths of a very complicated world, and the way that things should appear. And that's hard, right? I mean, I struggle at my age with some of the social media stuff. I can't imagine when you're trying to figure out who you are as a teenager, what that's like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not too unique to now, but even if I look back, and as you did, there was a period in next month I'm going to be 85 years young, I call it, and so. But if I look back to my parents, that were born in 1915, and during the First World War, then went through the Depression period of the 1930s, and then went through the Second World War, and all the challenges along the way made it very, very difficult and for them. But there was one thing about it, especially for males, that being vulnerable, you don't show that. You don't show emotion, and so for me, it's always been very important, to show emotions, be sharing the challenges in my life in terms of being able to share that with others, and then at the same time saying that you are special as an individual, and as you are, and then look at opportunity. But first and foremost, there appears to be so much frustration and challenges. We see much more now than we used to see when I grew up. There was no, as you already said, there was not even a television. I still remember the first television in our community. And somewhere behind the snowing, you could see characters moving around and say, oh my God, that's so exciting. And there was really no cell phones. So things have changed. The challenges have changed, but what has not changed is saying that you are still special as an individual. I don't care if you're a female, young, and going through the challenges of growing up, male, female, and saying, but you still are special, and there are opportunities. But first and foremost, respect and is extremely important. And then the other part, but I show usually on my card, that's the money I had, but has always been my foundation is attitude. Already from the time I was young, I will avoid negative. Don't even come close to me. And even with all the challenges that I had, I've always had a positive attitude, still do today. And then passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. And then the other one is work ethic. I even now I get in my companies that I have, and I have a number of them, but that's not what this program is about. But I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And I'm usually the last one to leave. And every day to me is a special day. I look outside and say, wow, am I lucky living in North America, living in Canada, here in the United States. I fly around a lot, do a lot of businesses all over the place. I usually sit by the window in a commercial plane, and I look outside and I say, it's paradise. It is paradise. And then realizing all the challenges that go on around the world. If I look at Eastern Europe, the Ukraine, and I look at the Middle East and numerous other places, or dictatorships like Russia, China, North Korea, and Venezuela. I can just go on and on and on and on. So we are so fortunate here in North America, and say, respect others and recognize the opportunity and the message that I give to children in particular, young people in particular, but also older ones, that attitude, passion, work ethic, what follows is success. And whatever success means, doesn't mean that you have a multi-millionaire or whatever, that's not what it's about, but, enjoy life, period. Be respectful to others. And then, the other thing that I grew up with is give back. Be part of your community, and culture of that community is always very important, and has always been very important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the generation that's growing up right now, I think it's harder for them to identify what their passion is, right? When you're being fed so many different things and what the world looks like. And I just say, just simplify it, just knock it down. Like, what makes you smile? What makes you happy? What, what fuels you, right? What fills your heart? Exactly. And, for you and me, part of our fueling was writing books. You wrote books, I wrote a book. And so, you just have to figure out, it doesn't have to be a monetary thing that creates success, right?
And then podcasting, Michele, is there we are, you and me sitting here, we have not met before. And, we have a bio, and, we have so many things similar. And at the same time, what we already know is that because podcasting is very, very powerful, we have a lot of people will be watching us from around the world, and the issues are the same around the world. And so, and the foundation is the same. Look at opportunity, give back to your community, respect others, attitude, passion, work ethic. Try to stay healthy and fit physically, and all of those things is to the issue of quality of life. And then and if you were so fortunate, not you, but in the general sense, then give back to others. And then what you and me are doing in podcasting is sharing it with others from around the world, and knowing that it will be an inspiration for some of the people that are sitting there and saying, am I the only one that is so troubled with all the things around me? No, you're not. but stay positive and gradually start looking at yourself and saying, what else can I do to give back and become an inspiration, you know?
And I think that some of all of our darkest hours are our best hours, right? Because those are the trying times that get you through, and then it makes you stronger. And all challenges in life, they're there for a reason. And you and I both wouldn't be sitting here had we not gone through challenges. And you have to walk through the challenge. You can't run around it. It always comes back, right? Whatever you're dealing with. So you got to figure it out, right? And that's part of it. That's part of life. And that is part of what makes us all unique.
And so the special part is that, the price of truth, as you wrote, that's why books like that are such an inspiration available to others. So is the book available on Amazon, obviously, but also on all the other major medias?
You can find it. Yeah, it's primarily on Amazon, but it's, on barnesandnoble.com and things like that, like bookshop.org. Not physically in bookstores, but all online.
Yeah. So the book very, very successful, obviously, and saying, so what is the next book, Michele? Obviously, it gave you, at least that's what it did for me, and I presume it did for you. You're an amazing writer, obviously, and saying it will give you the inspiration to say, what else can I share? And you have lots of things in your background, just from our podcast, where you have gone through. And so there's always a bit of a reluctance on people, including me, and I'm sure on your side as well. Should I be sharing my emotional challenges with others? And I have no issue with this now, but it was always something that kind of stood back. Or should I be vocal about the fact that I'm ADHD and have dyslexia and only academically, failed grade 3 and failed grade 7 3 times? When I do presentations, you may find this interesting. People say to me, and I'm fairly open about it, and people say to me, does it still trouble you that you only did 3 times grade 7? And I say, yeah, it does, very much so, even still today. I should have left earlier. I'm just being funny, But the point that I'm making is simply, and I'm active in that as well, our educational system that we have today, I don't think is as effective as it can be or should be, not only here in Canada, in the United States, and in Europe, but in other places as well, because we now recognize, likely more so, and I'm not only talking about ADHD, but neurodiversities in some description or another, that we are really not addressing those issues as well as we can in our educational system. The other part is that, like for a big part of my life, I was not a very good communicator. And so even when I already had all kinds of companies, for me to do presentations outside of my comfort zone, I maybe had 3 or 4 people I could interact with in my companies all at once, but not until in 1990 and 1989, I had somebody say to me, hey, John, I want you to, have you go with me to an organization called Toastmasters. I said, what is that all about? He said, communication skills. I said, are you going to ask me questions? He said, no, you just sit in and watch it and see what you think. I said, okay. So I went down there, and halfway through the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us all about you. I said, oh my God, I'll never go back here. But I did. And then for the people watching us that may be not familiar with Toastmasters, Toastmasters has been around for 30, 40 years, maybe even longer. And probably 10 million people as we speak here in North America have been part of Toastmasters, and also in Europe to a certain extent. Google it, and it's usually small groups of people that focus on communication skills. And then saying, oh, is that about speaking? No. it's first and foremost what they will focus on is become a good listener. And then the second one is to give confidence, to stand on your feet on issues that are impromptu and articulate an answer or get trained to do that. And so it gives you confidence in speaking. And then, the other one is to become a good listener and articulate other people's comments or presentations that they do. And then also develop presentations in a structured way. And for me, I stayed amazingly in Toastmasters. Initially, I could have crawled out of there on hands and knees because I was so intimidated by the process. But very quickly, I became familiar with it. I stayed there for 10 years, became a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level in Toastmasters. And obviously, I'm a good presenter. I'm a good presenter now, but nothing even close. I've seen hundreds and thousands of them that joined. I've never seen anybody that was as much anxiety as I had. But I stayed the course, and it changed my life. That in combination with finding ADHD and dyslexia, and so that opened the door for me where now I'm very good in business, for one, 10 different companies of some sort or another. I'm a good writer. I'm working on my 6th book. I'm a good presenter. I'm a good podcaster. And so that's all stuff coincidental that was by pure coincidence. I walked into a store, got this book, Driven to Distraction. I believe that maybe up to 30% of the population, male and female, at least in my opinion, are affected by or benefit from ADHD. And potentially dyslexia. Now, the interesting part about this book was written by Dr. Hollowell, who has written, is ADHD and has dyslexia, has written 18 books. And you are my podcast number 464. My podcast number 203 is with Dr. Hollowell. Can you believe it? Oh. And so we talk about, so up to that point, I thought, and I presented it to Dr. Hollowell in an hour-long podcast. On the Brink was 203. So I suggested that I thought initially that's maybe 6-7% of people, maybe they have ADHD. So, but then the more I read about it, the more I thought it's higher than that. It's maybe 18-20%. I suggested that to Dr. Holloway. He said, no, John, it's probably more than 25%. I agree with him. The other thing interesting, Michele, that I found is that, that a lot of people in business in particular, that are very, very effective and especially successful people in business or in some kind of organizations but require good communications are ADHD. Up to 50%, I suggested to Dr. Hollowell. He said, no, John, probably 75% or more. I agree with him. So that then being said is that, so all of those neurodiversity issues, I never even heard of it until about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And then in the schooling system, we don't really recognize it as well. Hopefully, gradually, it will change our educational system. And that I was exposed to it in Europe, in Holland, but the rest of Europe likely is the same in the United States, same in Canada, is that we have to incorporate that thought into our training and teaching so that young people in particular become first and foremost good readers. And so the more they read, make it interesting so that for me, if I do stuff that I like, I'm very effective. If I sit in a classroom and 3.5 years of the time we talk about stuff that I have no interest in, then I may as well not be there. Like when I was going to school in grade 7, if somebody asked me after I left the school, what did you talk about in the last hour or 6 hours, whatever it was, I have no idea. Because I was mentally I was not there. I may have been there physically, but not mentally. So it changed, obviously, my habit of learning and becoming informed. And I was very good at that. So obviously, I was always a good writer, but not a reader. And I was very, very good at numbers. And I still am today. And that good writing, obviously, I became an author working on my 6th book. And then in terms of presenting, thank you to Toastmasters, I became a good presenter.
Yeah. So that I have a story to add about these public speaking. When I was finishing my degree, one of the classes we had to do, our final was a presentation over everything that we did over the semester. And it was a very small class. And there was probably, I don't know, 20 people, but everyone had to present with a group. So there was like 5 people in our group. And I was so terrified of speaking in front of the group that I was like, maybe I just won't graduate. Like I literally, it was so painful. I went up there, my knees were shaking. I was clutching the paper and I was like, oh my gosh. So I can relate to that fear of the public speaking. And the more I did it through, my career, and the more I did it in life, it becomes less scary. But it is terrifying to speak in front of people. Absolutely.
Some people fear it more than death. And
Yeah,
then,
I did.
in all fairness to people that say, well, then he is perfect or she is perfect about this. No, it isn't, because even now, if I do a presentation, there's always a sense of anxiety because it has to be there for me to excel. And so that's what I do. Do not think for 1 second that people that appear to be very, very good presenters, that, so like for me, is that what is important to me, Remembrance Day, and here is the week of the November the 11th. I always make it a point that I want to speak at least to 3 or 4 schools to share with them. I was born during the early start of the war years, and I want to share with them how lucky we are here and what are the 2 minutes of silence all about and why. So, and I do that every year, probably to at least 3 or 4 schools if I can during that week in British Columbia. And but even then, I may have up to 1,000 young people sitting there, and I always have. But no matter what I do, I give presentations about ADHD or about business or all those things. There's always a little bit of anxiety that goes in the head. I need to have that in order to excel. And then if I do present, and I'm a very, very good presenter, they may not always remember what I spoke about, but they will never forget me, because I'm the type of presenter. I'm physically involved with them. So I feel very strongly about it. So the point that I'm trying to make is that even that part, that knowing the challenges along the way, is that it has become very rewarding to share with others the challenges that we went through, and all the steps along the way. Some people say, oh, you got this university degree and this and that, and you have had all of that. No, it didn't. And you mentioned it before, what makes you excel, but brought you to the point where you are today as one of the #1 selling Amazon book, The Price of Truth, is that the challenges that you went through along the way, and to share that with people, and you likely will do more after that, because there is something about writing books that are rewarding. It's a challenge maybe from the beginning as to what will it look like, what should it be, what font should you use, how do you get it published, and all of those things are challenges. But once you have the taste of it, it's extremely rewarding, and it takes time always. That is not, something that is rewarding financially instantly. It takes time, but to share with others your experience will become an inspiration, as it did for you and for me.
Yeah, and the reward that I didn't even know would be the primary reward is just reading reviews from people. And when what you went out to, communicate and have the reader feel, and when you get a review back and they say, gosh, we really felt what she was going through, or we felt her emotions and it was so raw, and you're like, okay, mission accomplished. That was what I was hoping for, was to get, evoke emotion in people to maybe tap into their own emotions of challenges that they're grappling with.
Yeah. So the other thing that I found is you created a strong female lead as a role model for your book. So how did you come to finding the lead role in your book as you did?
Yeah, that's interesting, because somebody asked me, are what parts of the main character are similar to you? And I think that when I wrote the character, I wanted her to have a very strong voice. And looking back on it, she is who I wish I could have been when I was her age. She's very strong-willed. She's very outspoken. She's very passionate, but again, she's deeply human. So, she has struggles, and she's facing trauma and loss. She loses her memory after a night that she goes to a grand opening, and she's just determined to find out what happened to her. But I think that for her, she's just, she feels lost in her world. And like we talked about before, I think everyone feels a little lost, right? And so, but having that perseverance and just being able to continue and find the answers that she was seeking. So I think that just, it doesn't even have to be female. It's just inner strength to, drive forward amongst the messy stuff. I think that's really what I wanted to come across, is that we all have junk, right? We all have noise and head trash and all that, but that is what makes us human. And so I wanted people to relate to that just because you have things that maybe have happened to you, it doesn't mean that's who you are, and it doesn't define you. You still are a human, one of God's children.
And special.
Special. Yeah.
So the other thing, for those that aspire to become a writer, like you, like me, and like others, your book became the #1 bestseller in 3 categories. And that's, what do you think resonate most with readers to make that happen? So what were the categories where you excelled in, on Amazon?
Yeah, it was mostly young adult fiction under like mystery and thriller.
Right.
I think that it's, you can create characters all day long, but you have to have something that's actually going to turn pages, right? So
Yeah.
I think that, with a thriller, you have to have twists and turns, and, you think it's this person and you think it's that person, and oh, it happened here or whatever. And so it's just keeping the reader engaged and not giving too much away, but dripping enough to have them keep reading. And I think that's one thing that my editor and I worked on so much, was to make sure that it wasn't just one aspect of her life. It was, she had relationships with her friends. She's a soccer player. Her dad died. She's in rigorous therapy trying to deal with stuff. And then there's still this underlying mystery of what happened to her one night. So I think that for me, it was just about weaving her whole life into the story, not just one aspect of trying to figure out what happened that night, but just, explaining who she was. And then, hopefully everyone fell in love with her and all the characters as well, that it just became, something that you were cheering for her. You wanted her to find the answers. But then when she finds the answers, the price of truth was pretty hefty.
So now you got us collectively to the point that's saying we must now read it. So show us the book once more, and physically. So the price of truth, you must buy it. So did you do an audio on it, Michele?
Yeah, the audio's in the works right now, so you can
Right.
get the ebook or the physical copy.
And so the other question is that this will be immensely successful, obviously. Are you thinking about other books potentially at somewhere down the line?
Yeah, you had asked me that, and I didn't touch on that. So this is actually going to be some sort of series. So right now, I'm in the midst of writing the book 2 of this Chasing Peace novel. And so it is a continuation of where we left off at the end of The Price of Truth.
So when do you think your next book will come out?
Hopefully it won't take 22 years. I think now that, like, once you've been through the process, and maybe you can speak to this too, that it's a little easier getting through. So I would say probably a year and a half is kind of the target mark.
Right. So so I did 5, and the last one also a #1 bestseller on Amazon, came out in July the 31st, is Billionaire Communication Skills. It's not how to become a billionaire, although you can and you may, and if you want to, but it's more about communication skills is the most critical and most important. That's what made them, that I refer to billionaires, is that it is the one skill set that was most critical is communication skills, as it is with a lot of other things like that. So we're going to stay in touch. I want to, again, I'm going to ask Scott to stay in touch with you when you get ready for your next book. We'll do another podcast again,
right,
and talk about other things that have happened between you and me over that other year or more than a year. But so by next fall, likely sometimes, or early 27. So Michele, it was a pleasure. Is there another contact point that people can find more information on you that you want to share with us?
Yep. So my website is micheleclarizio.com.
Okay.
And then, it has all my social media on it. They can even download the first chapter of the book and take a sneak peek at it. So lots of information on that website.
Okay. And then, and then for all those people watching us, on this podcast, subscribe to us, because that stimulates us to do more of this. Share it with others. Like it if you like it. Give comments if you have them. But it encourages us, both Michele and myself, to do more writing, more podcasting on issues that in a lot of cases are delicate but affect so many people from around the world. And so again, Michele, it was a privilege to have you on my podcast. Let's make sure you stay in touch.
Thank you so much. Lots of success with everything that you do.
Thanks, Michele. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.